This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Jackson Flickinger and Corey Walsh. And the Cleveland Cavaliers still have not lost a basketball game this season. They improved to 7-0 after a wild finish against the Milwaukee Bucks. It was really a crazy back and forth game, but the Cavs managed to overcome that early deficit and stun the Bucks on the road. And hey, when one team looks like they just met each other a few weeks ago and the other is playing with as much synergy and chemistry as the Cavs are, it's not surprising the game ended up in our favor. But we're going to discuss everything that happened in that game, from Donovan Mitchell's game-winning shot to the bench saving the day. And we'll branch out and ask the question, are the Cavs legit contenders? Or is it too early for us to say that? Before we get into this episode, let me remind everyone that you can find the Junkyard Pod on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Head over there and follow us on all of those platforms if you want to help us out. And lastly, we host live watch parties on Playback TV, so make sure you're following us there so you don't miss out on any of the stuff that we're putting out. Okay, Corey, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Give me your instant reaction to that wild Bucks game last night.
I think it was something where it seemed like the Cavs had a recipe for them to fall short in one game during this stretch. I mean, they've been trouncing teams throughout this schedule. The Bucks were a desperate team. The Cavs could have easily, playing another off of a game they just played, could have came out a little rusty, and they did. They looked a little slow. It looked like the Cavs are running out of gas a little. They're kind of playing uncharacteristically to how they looked throughout the stretch thus far. But the cream rises to the top here, clearly, as we're talking as the undefeated Cavs. So the team pulled out a win, as they should, against a disorganized Bucks team. And it's something where it's more of a statement win, because I think this team last year probably would have folded because the adjustments just probably wouldn't have helped them pull through. And they really brought out the bench, which is something that as games got tighter, further away, JB kind of tightened his rotations and Atkinson let his loose.
Kenny went straight to his guys. I think we could have easily seen that core four play 35 to 40 minutes. And I believe only Mitchell and Garland played more than 35 minutes last night, which was really a testament considering how close the game was throughout. Jackson, what were your takeaways?
I thought it was a pretty bad game. Honestly, I thought the Cavs, they played down to their competition and just really didn't have the energy in the beginning of the game. And the offensive process I thought was pretty bad. I think we talked about when we were watching the Knicks game earlier this week about how they were just missing shots. And against the Bucks, it seemed like they just weren't generating the good looks that you would like, especially early on. So I think they did show some resiliency and getting back into the game with the depth, because you saw them at the end of the second quarter really close the gap there. And then, the starters plus Isaac Okoro were able to get them over the hump in the end in a game that, they didn't deserve to win. But when you're a good team, you sort of make your own breaks. And I think the Cavs got lucky that Donovan Mitchell was able to regain that ball and then hit that, game-winning shot. But when you're good, it's just you just have a lot wider margin of error. And I think that's what we were seeing there. It's like this team is just really good. And they're, when their 10-man rotation is really deep, and that just allows you to overcome nights when your guys frankly don't have it. And I think, we've talked about how good Jarrett Allen has been this year. Besides the fourth quarter, he really stunk. So that is something that this team couldn't have overcome in the past, but they did this time. And it was really encouraging, even though it was a bad game.
Yeah, I actually felt a little bit more optimistic with how they played. I think the first 6 minutes of the game were a disaster. Jarrett Allen especially had his worst game of the season, but it was mainly that first quarter. He just looked really out of it for some reason. 2 turnovers, really awkward turnovers too, where he just kind of dribbles into trouble. You don't see that happen very often with Jarrett Allen, but it is worth saying in Kenny's offense, when you're giving more involvement and more opportunities for someone like Jarrett Allen, he's not Jokic. He's not Sabonis. When you increase his usage there, he's going to have some awkward moments. And I think we saw those growing pains come in at full force.
I just don't understand those turnovers, because
they were really bad.
Nobody is there anybody who consistently makes that pass out of driving? Because he passed it to like the top of the arc from
And
driving. Like
I
that's
think
not even like a LeBron pass.
it looked like Brook
LeBron doesn't make
Lopez
that.
was wrapping him up too. I thought Brook was trying to foul him and he passed it and
Yeah,
then he just kind of backed off. So
right.
it's really weird. He got
Both
another one
times.
behind the backboard. I don't know what was going on
Yeah,
with Jarrett Allen to
like
start that game.
if he just goes up, that's at least a foul. Or even if he
Mhm.
misses with how much they were collapsing on him, it's probably an offensive rebound. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They were just really uncharacteristic, and he was kind of not really that effective on defense, especially early on. So
Yeah, it took him a while.
and I know they put him on Giannis, so I can imagine that, that's a
He's no
really
Dean
tough
Wade.
matchup. Yeah, I mean, he actually has done a really good job on Giannis in the past.
Yeah.
But this time he was just like, it looked like from the opening tip, he was just not ready for that matchup. But usually, like all those things put together, usually means the Cavs aren't going to beat the Bucks. But this is a different Cavs team.
Yeah. And overall, I still thought, the Cavs, outside of the first 6 minutes, I did think that they were playing pretty good basketball. That last play, Donovan Mitchell kind of loses the ball. We went on a prayer, but it was a good back and forth game. Listen, I think the Bucks, the maybe the worst vibes in the entire league right now. They don't look like they like each other. But when you have Dame and Giannis, who were both on fire in that game right from the start too. I think Dame had 18 or 16 points in the first quarter. They finished combined 75 points. Like it's just really tough to win a game like that unless, you're a team like the Cavs, who we'll talk about later, might be a legit title contender. Most teams couldn't survive an onslaught like that from Dame and Giannis, but they were able to keep their composure and stay within range. Even in that opening quarter where Milwaukee just shot the lights out, they were right within range. And so this was an encouraging win to me because I think this was their first punch of the season that they really took, like a real serious punch from Dame and Giannis. They fell down by double digits quickly on the road, second night of a back-to-back, and they managed to come out with a win. Now, one thing that I wanted to highlight, I'll let you in here first.
One thing first. Damian Lillard is unbelievable in the sense that when he gets going, like he can just get hot in like the first couple minutes, and then it's like it's gonna last the whole night. Like I don't think I've seen somebody who can just carry a hot streak over and just keep it going forever. Like he is one of one from that standpoint, and even when he's an older, worser version of himself, that still exists, and that's just crazy to me. So shout out to him.
I also feel like this game, though, was a really good point about keeping continuity on rosters because I feel like to me that's kind of the takeaway I had is that this team has been together in these matchups, and the Bucks vibes are also pretty bad just because their team is constantly shifting parts. They're moving things around just to keep Giannis happy, trying to move bench players when they really have no more pieces left to move, and everyone who's there is struggling clearly. And then they bring in a coach too. Meanwhile, the Cavs kept their whole roster together. They switched the coach. The coach makes minor adjustments, and it works out for the Cavs. I feel like it's just another feather in Kobe Altman's cap for deciding to buy back into this roster. Because I think if the team wasn't as gelled as they were, that this team wouldn't be off to the start they're off now.
Definitely. That stability has really helped them hit the ground running. And one thing that I want to highlight, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is that when the Cavs start off the game and they go down by double digits very quickly, we could have easily seen Kenny Atkinson decide, all right, we're going to stick with the starters a little longer here and try to get back in it. It's not what happened. Sam Merrill and Isaac Okoro checked into this game very quickly. They entered at the 6-minute mark of the first quarter, and they completely changed things for the Cavs. Merrill in that first quarter hit 3 straight triples, finished the game with 17 points. Okoro hit a pair of threes in that first half, finished with 10 points in that half, all while making Damian Lillard work for each bucket. Now, I know it's hard to say that he's playing great defense when Dame had 41, but you can check the tape. Fear the Fro did a good job on Twitter. Okoro was all over Dame when he was the primary defender in that matchup, and he did a fine job against him. I mean, look, Jackson hit on it. Dame is just special. When he's in a rhythm like that, he hit some very difficult shots, but it was good that Okoro was out there and able to check him because if Damian Lillard's going to hit 8 step-back threes on you, you kind of live with it. You're not going to break down the rest of your defense trying to stop that like we've seen in the past. And so the last note that I want to make on Okoro is that his work on the glass maybe won them the game. He had 8 rebounds. That's something he's only done 3 other times in his career. He's only had 8 or more rebounds in the game 3 times. And now we all know the deal with Okoro. He's a great defender, limited offensive player, but rebounding is one of those intangibles that's still been on the board for him. That's something he still has control over. And last night we saw why it's important for him because it really changed the game.
You can't be somebody who only gets who has a 4 to 5 point scoring night. And also you don't have any, rebounds, or you're really low in that category, because rebounds are important. And I think his offensive rebound there in the fourth quarter really helped, win this game for the Cavs. And I think that's something that's a point of emphasis. Kenny Atkinson has brought that up multiple times in training camp and preseason, that he wants to see Isaac be more of a rebounder, especially on the offensive glass. And that really won them a game. One thing, because I do have to always slander Isaac Okoro whenever I get a chance. So I do want to say that his defense on that last Damian Lillard shot wasn't that good. It was like he didn't expect the step back there. And it's like, that's kind of, he's not going to the basket with Mobley and Allen standing there. So shouldn't have been caught off guard in that way. And he even said so afterwards. But it was a phenomenal game. So do have to give him his flowers.
To counter Jackson's slander, I'll come back with some positive.
A lot of nice things too,
and I'll bury your negativity with more nice things. I just think it's like Isaac Okoro bouncing back from his rough start to the season, where it kind of looked like he was falling out of order with Atkinson more than he was leaning back in after that Magic game. I feel like it's kind of shocking after one. Like, I would say that was probably Okoro's only good game to that point of the season against the Magic, but he comes out. Kenny makes him one of the first people thrown into the game. I honestly think that's a pretty striking move on Atkinson's part, because it's like the majority of the body of work clearly was not in Okoro's favor. He just knew what he needed to do, and Okoro took advantage of both the opportunities he had to earn more minutes in the rotation this season. And I think that's something where he wouldn't have done that in seasons prior. I think JB always was kind of bought into Okoro, I feel like, despite the results. And it's clear that Atkinson is a results-driven coach for his minutes. I think he always looks for the intangibles on the players in his roster. And if Okoro is going to come out with this level of energy, even if defensively he's not playing to the level that we are accustomed to, if he's checking all these other boxes like Jackson's saying, then Okoro is going to become a more valuable player. And I just want to give props to both Kenny and Okoro on that front for buying in on him.
Well, one thing that Kenny has said, and he's mentioned this multiple times, that he's still figuring out how to use Okoro. And that stems back to, the Cavs did a lot of off-season work before training camp, and Okoro wasn't able to be a part of that because of his contract situation. So he really got a late start with Atkinson. So that's where Kenny is still trying to figure out how to use him. And I think we will see his role expand throughout the regular season. And I'm not surprised that he, really started off not in the rotation, but I think that will continue to grow as the season goes along.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention as we kind of transition to the Cavs depth, because that has been a huge key for them and their success so far, is that one of the big and important things that Kenny has brought to this team is just the fact that he trusts them. He's expanded the rotation and shown them that basically every night these guys are going to have an opportunity to be on the floor and establish themselves. You can take someone like Sam Merrill, who has been the first off the bench all season long, despite getting off to a slow start offensively. There wasn't this lingering threat of, well, if Sam misses his first 2 shots, he's going to be on the bench for the next 2 weeks. He was in the rotation every night, even when he was struggling to shoot the ball. And I think that really makes a difference, even if it sounds a little silly. That peace of mind goes a long way, especially for a shooter like Sam. And Kenny was justified in giving Sam consistent opportunities, because we saw last night, 17 points off the bench. It probably won them the game. And so it's just easier to establish a rhythm when you know that the coach trusts you to be on the floor, and he's not going to yank you if you have a rough stretch. That goes for not just Sam, but for everyone on the roster, even Okoro. Like, the fact that he knew he was going to get an opportunity tonight or last night against Dame, he more than likely knew he would be called on eventually to check him, and he stepped in and he had a great game. And it's just a change from the last few years, where it really felt like one bad stretch could have you on the bench for a while, depending on where you were in JB's hierarchy. I know there were certain guys who he loved and he would play no matter what. But someone like Sam last year, a couple bad games, we wouldn't see him for a month. So it's just it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, Sam's great. But Tony, will you apologize for all of your Caris LeVert slander, all the articles you've written about how they need to trade Caris LeVert?
All the articles.
All of the articles. That's a lot. I think it was actually like the most read article on like Fear the Sword for the summer. So
people were ready for him to be gone. It wasn't just me. Right. Listen, I would like to apologize. It's not even that I was unfamiliar with his game. I was very familiar with it. Like perhaps I was too familiar with this game, but he has played great. And I really think part of it is that I think I mentioned this on one of the previous podcasts is that when Caris LeVert checks into the game, it's not Caris LeVert time anymore. It's everyone is playing a role in the offense, and Caris LeVert is getting to be himself. Time. He's not like under JB. It felt like Caris LeVert was trying to fill one of two roles. Either he was trying to be Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, like play that role for the second unit, or they were forcing him to be like a 3-and-D guy. And he's neither of those. He's someone who can do fantastic at breaking down his man one-on-one, and then either creating a shot for himself or setting up one of his teammates. And if you can get the right dosage of that, it's perfect, like we've seen so far. I actually have a stat real quick. This is for Jackson mainly, a Caris LeVert stat, okay? Can you guess Caris LeVert and the core four? They have a net rating of plus what? Can you guess? You can give me a range.
It's like 30. It's like, it's insane. 30?
Corey, do you have a guess?
It's a lot.
I'll be more tempered. I'll say 22.
So here's the thing. Caris
LeVert like haven't played a whole lot, though.
They have a net rating of plus 112.
Yeah, I know.
They've played 14 possessions.
Right. So they haven't played a lot.
It's just insane still. I mean,
I think it's mostly
Caris is off to a great start.
They closed one of the games, I think, and they just kind of might have been the Knicks game. I think they might have closed that game.
Yeah.
Anyway,
jokes aside, Caris has been so good to start this season. I think he's legitimately, if he continues playing like this, he's going to be a 6th man of the year candidate, and he could very well win it if he's playing like this. Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about, the human element with Sam, I think that's way more important with, it is really important with Sam, but it's also important with Caris because I wrote an article about this. He talked about after the Magic game, just about how comfortable he is with Kenny Atkinson and how much that has allowed him to kind of be the best version of himself. And I think you see that, and Atkinson has talked about that. One of the things that he always wanted to do in Brooklyn was get him more efficient. And we are really seeing that. If you look at where he's getting his shots from, he's getting the highest percentage of his shots at the rim in his entire career. And he's taking the lowest percentage of mid-range shots in his entire career. And I think that is super helpful because I remember at the end of the 23 season when he was taking a bunch of threes, it was like, Caris LeVert can be a 3-and-D guy. But really that was kind of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like that's just not who he is, not who he's comfortable being. But under Atkinson, you're seeing him get to the basket, really make off of that a lot more. And also there's a lot better spacing out there. So he's able to do that better. So I think he's able to play his game, but it's the best version of his game. And that's why he looks like a really good, 6th man.
Yeah, they've really minimized the harm that Caris is doing on any given night and just maximize what he does best. And that's what you want from a coach. I want to transition here and talk about another player who Jackson is a fan of, Dean Wade. So as of last night, the Cavs, they're 18-2 in Wade's last 20 starts dating back to last season. But regardless of whether or not he's going to be in the starting lineup, full-time starter, whatever, the point is he's averaging career highs across the board, including minutes. He's taking almost 5 3-pointers per game. And he's only shooting 33% from deep right now. So he could actually end up taking more 3-pointers as the season goes on if he starts making them at a more consistent rate. But the point is, whether or not he's a starter, Wade being out there more often just gives them so much more versatility on both ends of the floor. And I want to talk about his defense for a second, because one of the key things that I've been yapping about all season so far is that it seems like Kenny is allowing this Cavs team to switch on defense. And this was the thing they didn't do the last few years. They really hated to switch any actions on the perimeter. And a big reason why they're able to do it now is because you have Wade out there in a lot of lineups, and he can switch 1 through 5. So he gives you that option. Like last night, Wade was defending Dame and Giannis. He actually had a lot more success against Giannis than Dame, but that's not the point. The broader point, even if you zoom out from just Wade, if you just look at the Cavs in general, they used to go to obscene lengths to avoid giving up a switch last year. Like we would see Garland and Mitchell go so far out to tag and recover and scramble. It was silly, and it would lead to some really weird and awful breakdowns for a defense that is really great at everything else. It was just these weird gaps that they had, and that's not happening anymore. We're seeing Kenny again trust his guys to hold their switch, to hold their own in a switch if it's necessary, because sometimes it is necessary to switch. So you can't expect Garland and Mitchell to fight through every screen. And so because of this, the Cavs, they've become an even more difficult team to score on. I mentioned earlier, Dame and Giannis combined for 75 points, and they were hunting switches throughout that, but the Bucks still finished scoring well below their average from last season. The Cavs defense was just very difficult to crack. And when they can throw different coverages at you and they're not limiting themselves by trying to avoid a switch, they're just that much better as a team.
They do need to stop that 2-3 zone, though. That is,
it does not work out.
That has been working.
I do want to say that I like the switching, and not even just from Dean Wade. I like the switching just from the whole team. There was a couple possessions in the game against the Bucks where like Niang and Merrill would get switched on to somebody like Lillard, and they were, because you have such a good backline defense, especially if you have Wade and or Mobley or Allen back there, that you can be really aggressive in how you're playing on the perimeter, because if they blow by you, they still have to finish at the rim over somebody who's a lot bigger. So I think being empowered to be more aggressive in those situations actually helps a poorer defender like Merrill or Niang. So I just like them switching more overall.
I think it's something too where the major concern with Atkinson was, is there going to be a dip in the defense? And I weirdly feel like this team is more bought in defensively than I think a lot of us were expecting. It's like the offense still is on the rise, but the defense too is kind of matching it. And I feel like with this team, more times than not, their best stretches, their avalanches are coming from them being active on the defensive end and getting in those passing lanes and just generating turnovers or being really aggressive off the rebound. I think it's something where, if, like Jackson was saying, where you have those two bigs and you have a strong interior defense, you need to trust your perimeter players. And I feel like it's something where Garland and Mitchell don't really get their proper accolades for being active defenders. They just get they're small guards, can't defend well. But when they're bought into a defensive system, as we're seeing in this stretch, like they're not necessarily giving up on possessions. It's just that they're going and trying their hardest, and they're in a defense where they're allowed to have that freedom to do so. I feel like when you're getting constantly stuck in switches, then you're never going to be able to have those skills be displayed.
Yeah, and talking about Garland and Mitchell, I think they've both done a really good job of doubling off ball when it's appropriate and jumping, like anticipating the passing lanes. And we saw Mitchell do that a lot last year too, but seeing Garland more involved there has been really helpful. And one of the things I believe I've mentioned this before, but Atkinson has repeatedly said that he thinks Garland's a really good defender, which, I never really agreed with. But I guess if you just say it enough, that Garland starts to believe it as well. And yeah. I think you're actually like seeing that. And that's something to continue to watch.
Kenny manifested it, because I was actually going to mention, if no one else did, Darius he's playing good defense. Like, he is genuinely playing good defense to start the year, especially off ball, disrupting passing lanes. Like, I don't know if his deflection numbers are impressive or not. I didn't check them, but they feel impressive. He's made a lot of really nice plays. Even just like stripping the ball in transition. I forget who it was, but he had like a really
Brunson.
It was against Brunson, but then he did one against Orlando. I think it was on Wagner. He stripped him. Yes. And I think it was still magic ball, but still, it was just impressive stuff seeing Darius get in there and fight. Before I transition to our last topic, are there any other Cavs role players we want to shout out? Maybe Luke Travers, the next big thing, had a great game. Great 4 minutes against Orlando.
God, he's active off ball.
No, but stay tuned to Fear the Sword on Saturday when Tony goes and covers the game and writes all about Luke Travers.
Yeah.
So I do want to say that I have been I would say I'm very pro Dean Wade starting. I just want to say that I am monitoring the situation and I am thinking about backing away from that take. So
it's interesting that the lineup stats are not good. They're not
good.
looking too good. The defense is, but the offense, I think, is like in the 40th percentile or something. I don't know. I'm interested to see what they end up doing. That's why in my earlier little rant, it doesn't really matter if he's starting as long as he's just involved and playing like 20 minutes a game.
No, but I feel like the thing with Dean starting is that the whole buy-in for him for this to work offensively was going to be that he was still willing to fire. And through the first few games, we kind of felt like he was on that track. But it seems like as the team is progressively getting better and feeling like more congealed as an offensive unit, it seems like Dean Wade is still kind of being a little passive on his looks. It's not. I feel like the way the offense is working, those looks are there. It's just something where Dean mentally still, I feel like, is not at the stage he needs to be, where he's just gonna. I feel like he's still too afraid of hijacking the offense by taking shots.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues there is that he's just not a movement shooter like Max Strus or even Sam Merrill. So like you can't really run like a pin down for Wade. I mean, you can run a pin down for Wade, but it's different. He's not flying off it like Max Strus would. He's not really that ideal like lights out movement shooter that you would want there. And so maybe that's why the fit hasn't been as seamless. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what they do. If Max Strus is in that starting lineup, I feel pretty comfortable that Dean Wade will still be playing 15 to 20 minutes, and that's good for me.
I'm just mad that they've done that stupid 2-3 zone 900 times, but they haven't tried the 3-2 zone with Mobley. That was so beautiful. And you have Wade. Like, if you're playing Wade that much, you can do that because you can't really do that with, Isaac Okoro or Max Strus on the bottom, but you can do that with Wade. So, anyways, I'm sad.
I think something that I've been thinking about, and I don't know what your guys' opinion is, with Max Strus coming back, do you feel like the rotation's going to get, like, is there going to be an odd man out? And if so, who would that be for you guys? Or do you think it's just going to be a case of Max Strus slides in, minutes diminish, but they keep the rotation kind of similar?
In an effort not to be mean, I'll say we'll see.
All right, sure. Yeah, for sure.
I will be not mean, but I would say maybe Ty Jerome. Those 9 minutes probably go all to Max Strus, and then the rest of the guys get their minutes. I think that
Niang would be the one who would get cut out.
Niang too. Okay.
Just because I think that, if you have, and that's where I think it would go to 11, because he talked about 10 or 11, and I think he wants to keep Niang playing at least in the regular season. So if they need him, but I think that he's going to be the one who gets his minutes severely cut, as opposed to like Ty Jerome.
I was Max
Strus. Yeah. I think that just because you're shifting Wade actually back to his normal position, that you're not really adding a guard, you're more so adding a big. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's more the lines I was thinking of too with Niang, not Jerome. I'm still high on Jerome.
Yeah, so you were just baiting us into that.
Whatever, dude. You know what? We can redact my question.
Well, I have a better question for you guys. It's the most generic question in the world that I'm sure every Cavs podcast has already covered, but everyone is thinking about it. Are the Cavs legit? I know none of us want to, we want to be hesitant to decide things in early November, but Jackson, do you think the Cavs are making the leap into the NBA's top class?
For sure. I think that it's pretty clear that they are doing that. The numbers say that, the eye test says that. And I think the reason why you should believe is because the two big lineup is working really well. And I think that and the small lineups that we saw last year really work well with, from January through mid-February, where you had like the smaller spread lineups. Those are still working really well. So the Cavs are a really unique team in the sense that they can throw two very different styles at you. And depending on the matchup, you're going to have a hard time stopping both. And I think that, makes them really difficult to play against. And that's why you just get this like 48-minute onslaught from the Cavs where every lineup is good, where every lineup has a very dynamic guard. Every lineup has a, phenomenal big. And then when they're all together, it works pretty well, even if the lineups with Wade aren't working well. Like that's where if you're, in today's NBA, when there's not a prime LeBron James, the best teams are the ones that have 48 minutes of just phenomenal basketball. Like, that's why the Celtics won the championship last year. It's because every lineup they had out there was just phenomenal and their starters were great. That's what this Cavs team is doing, and I like it more than even like a team like the Thunder. I kind of have the Cavs a little bit ahead of the Thunder just because I like the Cavs offense more. I think the Cavs offense is a lot more varied in the sense that when you have the two bigs, you play a lot faster. You attack the rim more. And then when you have the lineups with just one big, you play a lot slower, but shoot like a million threes. And I think that variety within the offense, like, allows you to overcome a bad shooting night like they did against the Knicks in a way that an offense that is so reliant on threes doesn't. So I really believe this team.
Jackson's in. Corey, are you in?
Yeah, I'm in because I think this team was hitting its goals despite feeling like there were log jams at times last season. And it's going pretty well offensively to the point where I feel like it's where Mobley's obviously hitting his stride offensively. I think it's also it's less discussed, but I feel like Garland is also coming back to his form that we've been hoping he would get back to. And it's not even because they're kind of playing within himself, like playing within Garland's skill set. It's more that Garland is bought in. And I think that's something that is helping the Cavs take it to the next level. Is just that there's clearly a buy-in from the first to the 10th man in the rotation in this Kenny Atkinson system. It's something where they took what was working, they threw out what didn't. The offense is something that, like Jackson said, it's 48 minutes of perfect basketball, but that's also something where it's just tiring on a night-to-night basis, and I think it's something that actually will really help in postseason too. I'm not saying the Cavs are going to go out on this barn-burning tour like they have in the first 7 games of this season, but it's something where if you're playing at this like style of basketball, it's very draining in postseason. And I think the Cavs already were going to be a good regular season team. So you kind of need to look and see where is this going in postseason. And before, you could come up with like 3 ways to stop the Cavs offense entirely. And now it's something where we're seeing cases of, well, let's say Mobley's not having a great night. We're seeing other players step up, and it doesn't even need to be other members of the core 4 at this point. It's players that come off the bench. It's just something where it feels like the team is now a system and not a player-based team where one player drives the truck and everyone just follows behind.
Yeah, I think that's just real quick. One of the things that I really like is Donovan Mitchell's averaging 29 minutes per game right now. He's really being the accent to this team instead of like determining whether the team was going to win or lose a game. And I think that game against the Bucks is a great example of that, where it's like, oh, this is where you need your superstar to throw you over the edge and win you a game. He goes out and does it. But he didn't need to do it for 4 quarters like we would have seen in years past.
Yeah, he didn't need to dig them out of that early hole that they fell into, which they absolutely would have relied on him to do that in seasons past. They're not playing very heliocentric like we've seen in the past. And look, all the numbers right now would suggest that they are a legit contender. You might say it's only 7 games, but history is pretty friendly to teams that start 7-0. Those teams tend to be actual contenders. So all of this right now bodes well for the Cavs. And here's the thing. Corey kind of already mentioned this. We have seen the Cavs put together dominant stretches like this before. It's not some random new thing that's just happening out of nowhere. They went 18-2 for a stretch last season. They won 51 games the year before that with the 2nd best net rating in the league. And they were pummeling teams for a stretch in 21-22 to get all of this started. So we have seen them play like this before. The difference right now is that it no longer feels like they're punching above their weight class or doing anything that isn't sustainable. They're winning. They were winning despite some of their glaring issues in the past. Now they're playing with a style that I genuinely think they can replicate against any team in the NBA. So I don't think this is a fluke or just a hot start to the season. I think this is who the Cavs are. And in many ways, this is who they have shown the potential to be throughout the last few years. Now it's just being realized in a way that is impossible to deny.
I do have a couple quick points. The 3-point shooting is a little unsustainable. It's above 40% right now as a team, which that's not going to continue. So expect that to come down. But I think they have like a massive margin of error right now. Not in that Bucks game, but just overall with how well they're playing. It's not like they're squeaking by games. They're, four of their, was it 5 of their 7 wins 5 of their 7 wins came by 10 or more points. So they are absolutely destroying teams on most nights. And another thing I want to say, I've been looking into this for an article for Fear the Sword. So if you're listening to this, head there and read that. Of the last 5 years, after the first 7 games, the team that has won the championship in 4 of those 5 years was in the top 5 in net rating after 7 games. Usually the best teams get out to hot starts. And last year, the top 4 teams in net rating were the Timberwolves, Nuggets, Celtics, and Sixers. And the Nuggets got to the second round. Timberwolves got to the Western Conference Finals. Celtics won the championship. And the Sixers probably would have been to the Eastern Conference Finals if they didn't just, get injured like they did. So the start of the season is usually a pretty good indicator of teams because everyone's trying a lot harder at the start because you don't have that fatigue factor. And guys are usually pretty healthy because you had a whole off season to get ready. So I think a 7-game sample size is dangerous if you're looking at like a January 7-game sample size. But a beginning of the season 7-game sample size is usually pretty accurate.
Especially for a team that's been together as long as they have been. Like, this isn't the Charlotte Hornets getting off to a 7-0 start. And you're like, whoa, are they real this year? It's like, this is a team that has been right on the bubble of being a contender for 2 years now, really.
One funny thing, the Rockets keep showing up because I looked at all the sample size, and like the Rockets keep showing up really high every year, and I'm like what? Like, why do they keep getting off to these good starts and then they just fall off? So it's good for every team except for the Rockets. Wanted to throw that out there.
Well, look, I think you couldn't have dreamed up a better start for the Cavs this year, and it's not a fluke. Maybe this will be a freezing cold take, but I don't have any reason to believe that this is a fluke. I think the train is leaving the station, and if you want to be on board this Cavs hype train, you should get on it now because they are a legit force in the Eastern Conference. Doesn't mean they're going to win the championship. Just to finish off so that I can, have some insurance here. I'm not saying they're going to win the championship, but I think they are quickly proving to be right in that like top 3 or top 4 contenders list.
The Cavs are good. That's my take. They may not win the championship, but they are on the short list of teams that could.
In the Eastern Conference that was full of moving pieces, the Cavs' continuity has proven to stand out and be a foundation for what they're doing now. So I think they can only honestly go higher, barring unforeseen injury.
And the Sixers and Bucks are who we thought they were.
Yes.
I was just going to mention, not to, slander other teams, but if you look at teams that made their big swings, whether it's the Bucks last year, making their big swing for Damian Lillard, and that has completely backfired. The Knicks so far, the Cat trade's actually looking a little better. Now he's starting to get acclimated there. So we'll see. We'll wait and see. But Philly, not looking too great either. To be fair, they didn't really give much up. They haven't really played yet, but that might be the issue long term is that they haven't really played together. But we'll end up seeing. The point is the Cavs kept it together, and it's paying off for now.
I do want to say the Knicks.
They're turning it around.
I say watch out for the Knicks because they are playing some good basketball. So don't sleep entirely on them. Their offense is really good. Their defense sucks. It's kind of if they can figure out how to play with Cat, then that'd be good. But one of the things that's kind of weird with them is that the Bridges trade only really makes sense if you're going to be a defensive first team, and the Cat trade only makes sense if you have another backline defender. So I'm just not sure if they can ever marry those two things up together. But I think they're the clear third team in the East right now.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. Please let us know in the comments if you think the Cavs are legit contenders at this point, or if we should still hold off and wait a little longer before making that declaration. If you enjoyed the show and you want to help us out, go ahead and follow on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Drop a like, leave a rating, do it all because it all really helps. And with all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. I don't have any questions for Brian.